General Journal Part 2. Let's look at bad debts. I'm going to leave the writing up so you can take notes, but I will be talking in the meantime. Right, so sometimes we can't find our debtors and they haven't paid their accounts. We send them reminders, we phone them, we email them, but they still don't come in to pay their accounts. They are over 60 days due. They're not paying. We send tracing agents to find them. They also can't find them. So we've explored every means to try and find our debtor so that he can pay his account, but we can't seem to find the debtor. If all attempts to look for the debtor fails, then we write off his account as a bad debt. If we keep his account open in our debtor's ledger and his account is overdue by 6 months, we are overstating our records because he hasn't come in to pay. There's no chance that he's going to pay in the next 6 months. So we then have to remove his account from our debtor's ledger. And that's what we call writing off an account. So we don't write off the debtor now. The debtor is a person. We don't believe in committing crimes. So we're not going to write off the debtor. We are, however, going to write off his debt. We do this by debiting bad debts. Bad debts is an actual account in the ledger and it is an expense. We therefore need to debit it and we need to credit debtor's control. We will also go and credit the actual debtor in the debtor's ledger. To show this as a decrease in our debtor's control as well as a decrease in our debtor's ledger. Sometimes we find a debtor and they have been declared insolvent. So what does insolvent mean? Insolvent means that they can't pay their debt, their assets are being liquidated by the court, and so they can only pay a portion of their debt. Once everything is sold, the amount of assets that they have now in cash has to be split up between their various creditors. So we are only going to receive a portion of the debt that we have recovered, not 100% of it. So the amount that we do receive from this type of debtor will be recorded in the cash receipts journal, and the balance will be written off by means of a general journal entry in the GJ. Okay, let's look at this example quickly. A debtor owes 1,000 Rand and he is declared insolvent. In other words, he can't pay his full debt of 1,000 Rand. His estate pays a dividend of 25 cents in the Rand. So for every 1 Rand that he owes us, he's going to pay us 25 cents. So if you calculate 25 cents in the Rand for the 1,000 Rand debt that he owes, he will only be able to pay 250 Rand. The rest of the debt, which is 750 Rand, must be written off. So we've got to subtract 250 from 1,000 Rand, and in the general the general journal, we need to put in an entry of 750 Rand. In the cash receipts journal, we show an entry of 250 Rand. In both cases, the CRJ entry and the general journal entry, the debtor's control is decreasing as well as the debtor's account in the debtor's ledger. In the case of the 250 Rand, our bank is increasing. So we'll debit bank and credit debtor's control. In the case of the 750 Rand, our bad debts are increasing. So we debit bad debts and credit debtor's control as well as the debtor's account in the debtor's ledger. So how do we record bad debts? Right, we record it in the general journal. We debit bad debts, which is an expense, and we credit the debtor's name as well as debtor's control. This tells us that we are making a triple entry. Our narration is account written off as bad. Now, sometimes debtors who have been written off reappear and pay their accounts. This happens when we have debtors who haven't paid maybe for 6 months. We've written them off. They have a change of heart, and so they come into the store or they pay online, and we then we accept their funds, but they no longer appear on our books. So we've got to debit bank and credit bad debts recovered in our CRJ to show that we have received cash. Example. On the 10th of March, H. Shady's account in the debtor's ledger is written off. He owed 320 Rand. So we make a general journal entry. First and foremost, we're going to debit bad debts. And we're then going to credit the debtor's name. Take note, the account that we're crediting moves slightly to the right. We have to have an indentation to show the account that we're crediting. So bad debts is against the margin almost, and H. Shady is slightly indented away from bad debts on the next line. In our folio references, we've got N9 to show that bad debts is an expense in the nominal account section, and we can refer to the nominal account section, account number 9, in our general ledger. D4 is the number of the debtor. So that's our debtor's reference number. He is debtor 4. We are debiting the general ledger with 320, and we're crediting the account of H. Shady in the debtor's ledger. We also go and credit debtor's control in the debtor's control column. So in our debtor's control column, in our debtor's control in the general ledger, we will credit 320. Our narration, account written off as bad. You need to underline your narrations, please. So at the end of a narration, once you've completed writing your narration, you take your ruler and draw a line, and you start your next general journal entry on the next line. So you're showing a difference by underlining. There's your underlining. Let's look at how we enter these in the general ledger and the debtor's ledger. So the debtor's control has a balance of 9,400 Rand. So overall, a summary of all our debtors on the 1st of March, they owe us 9,400. If you look at the debtor's ledger of College Stores, you have H. Shady. On the 1st of March, this guy owed us 320 Rand. That was his balance brought down. But we made a general journal entry. So we debit bad debts with 320 Rand, and we credit debtor's control. Now, if you look on the credit side of debtor's control, we have what we call, in the details column, sundry accounts. Why did we write sundry accounts and not bad debts? Well, refer to your general journal. In your general journal, you have a column for debtor's control, which means that there could be other transactions that are also entered into that debtor's control column. So sundry accounts means that we've added them all together and thereby making a summary transaction of the general journal into our debtor's control account. We'll explore more as we go on. Okay, so how do we enter that same transaction into the debtor's ledger? In the debtor's ledger, we credit H. Shady. So under details, you have bad debts to show that you're writing off his account. Under folio, GJ1, because that is the general journal that you are referring to. And you crediting 320, meaning that he does not owe you that money anymore. So will he appear on the debtors list? I'll leave you to think about that. Withdrawals of merchandise by the owner. Okay, so I told you in the previous general journal discussion in part 1 that the owner does not only have to take cash for his personal use. He can also take equipment, he can take merchandise, he can take a vehicle, he can take whatever he wants out of the business. However, because we record every transaction and we regard the business as a separate entity from the owner, we need to make sure that whatever he takes needs to be recorded. So we record this in the general journal. What's special about merchandise is that the owner does not take the merchandise at the selling price. He always takes merchandise at the cost price. So we cannot record the selling price in our general journal when the owner takes stock. We record it at the cost price. That's good to remember, because in your transactions going forward, we could give you the selling price and you would then have to calculate what the cost price is. So be always certain that the owner takes goods, stock, merchandise at cost price, not selling price. Okay, so we debit drawings, which affects your owner's equity, and we credit whatever he's taking, be it trading stock, consumable stores, equipment, vehicles, whatever. All right, and then your narration would be trading stock taken for personal use. Let's look at this example. The owner took stock costing 500 Rand for his own use. We debit drawings to increase our drawings, and we credit trading stock to show a decrease in our trading stock, and the account that we credit is the amount that we credit is 500 Rand. Your narration, stock taken by the owner. In your folios you have B3 and B5 showing that goes to your balance sheet account section, to those relevant accounts when we are posting. We underline our narrations again. I'm reminding you, underline your narrations. Moving on. When we post to our balance sheet account section, we're posting to the drawings account. We're showing an increase in drawings, which ultimately decreases his equity. And then we're showing a decrease in trading stock. There's our Contra Account. Interest on overdue debtors. Sometimes debtors don't pay their accounts on time. They could be in arrears for 2 months or 3 months. If this is the case, we then inform them that we will be charging them interest, and we increase their accounts with the interest. Okay, let's look at how to record the interest. The interest will be recorded in the general journal. The account of the debtor, or the debtor's name, will be debited to show that it is increasing, and debtor's control will be debited to show that we are increasing our debtors. On the credit side, we will increase interest on overdue account, which is income, and we have a narration called interest charged on overdue account at whatever the percentage is for however many months we are charging interest. Let us look at an example of how to calculate the interest. On the 15th of March, it was discovered that D late's account of 240 Rand is 2 months in arrears. He is to be charged interest at 16% per annum. Per annum means for the whole year, for 12 months. So interest is charged at 16% on 240 Rand for the whole year. But we only want to charge him interest for the 2 months that he's in arrears. So if you look at the calculation, it tells you that 240 Rand times 16% is equal to 38 Rand 40. So if we had to charge him for the whole year, he would pay us 38 Rand 40. But we only want to charge him for the 2 months that he's in arrears. So we've got to multiply 38 Rand 40 by 2 and divide it by 12, which will give us 640 Rand. Please read your transactions very carefully to see how many months the debtor is in arrears for, so that you can calculate the appropriate amount of interest. So how do we record this transaction? We debit D late with 606 Rand 40 in the debtor's ledger as well as the debtor's control, and we credit interest income in our general ledger with 6 Rand 40, and our narration is interest charged at 16% per annum for 2 months. Remember, what do we do next? We underline. Let's look at our posting to the ledger. Our interest income is credited and we are debiting debtor's control. Because we're posting the total from the debtor's control column in our general journal, we have sundry accounts written in our details under the debtor's control account. We also post the credit side of our debtor's control account from our general journal. We post the total, which is 320 Rand. Remember, there could be other transactions in our debtor's control account in our general journal, and that's why we have sundry account written as the details instead of the actual contra accounts that we usually write. In our debtor's ledger, we have D late. He's debtor number 6. His balance was 240 Rand. We charged him interest. So now he owes us more money. He owes us 246 Rand 40 cents.